The first thing Ethan Cole ever told me was not his name. It was, "Do not walk to your car alone tonight." I should have asked how he knew my name before I knew his. Rain had turned Manhattan into a blur of silver pavement and yellow headlights by the time I left the Ashford Hotel. It was almost midnight, and after 14 hours coordinating a charity gala for the Hudson Arts Foundation, all I wanted was sweatpants, leftover Chinese food, and 6 uninterrupted hours of sleep. I stepped beneath the hotel awning and pulled my coat tighter. That was when I noticed the black sedan across the street. Engine running. Headlights off. I told myself it meant nothing. This was Manhattan. Black sedans waited outside expensive hotels every night. I started toward the parking garage 2 blocks away. The sedan moved. Slowly, I crossed East 48th Street. It followed. My heartbeat changed before my thoughts did. Not fear exactly. Recognition. The quiet instinct that tells you something ordinary has stopped being ordinary. I stopped beside a brightly lit pharmacy and reached for my phone. The sedan stopped about 30 yards behind me. Claire Bennett. A man's voice came from my right. I turned. He stood beneath the pharmacy lights in a charcoal overcoat, rain caught in his dark hair. Early 30s. Tall. Gray eyes. He was not smiling, but he did not look threatening either. He looked calm. Too calm. "Who are you?" I asked. His attention shifted past me toward the sedan. "Someone telling you not to walk to your car alone tonight." That is not an answer. It is the useful part. I tightened my grip on my phone. "How do you know my name?" He stepped closer to the curb, but left several feet between us. "Go back inside the hotel. You do not get to give me orders." Something almost amused crossed his face. "Good. Keep that instinct. Just keep it somewhere with cameras and hotel security." The sedan started moving again. As it passed the intersection, the stranger watched it with an expression I could not read. Then the car disappeared into the rain. "You knew it was following me," I said. "I knew it had been waiting too long. For me." His silence answered before he did. "Go inside, Claire." 10 minutes later, the hotel arranged a car to take me home. When I looked back through the glass doors, the stranger was gone. I barely slept. At 9 the next morning, my boss, Daniel Mercer, called me into his office. His usual coffee sat untouched beside a stack of folders. That worried me more than anything. "The board received anonymous messages concerning you," he said. "We finalized a temporary security arrangement this morning." My stomach tightened. "Security?" Daniel nodded toward the window. A man standing beside it turned around. Charcoal coat, dark hair, gray eyes. For 1 second, neither of us spoke. "Claire," Daniel said, "this is Ethan Cole. He will be your personal bodyguard until we understand what is happening." Ethan held my gaze with the same impossible calm he had worn in the rain. I heard Daniel explaining schedules, transportation, and precautions, but his words faded behind one question. The Foundation had finalized my protection that morning. Ethan had been watching the sedan the night before. So how had my new bodyguard known I needed protecting before anyone had hired him? I spent the next 10 minutes listening to Daniel explain security procedures while watching Ethan pretend the night before had been completely ordinary. He stood near the office window with his hands relaxed at his sides, saying almost nothing. No nervous movements. No unnecessary questions. He looked less like a man beginning a temporary assignment and more like someone waiting for everyone else to catch up. "This is precautionary," Daniel said. "Ethan will accompany you to meetings, events, and anywhere else connected to Foundation business." I looked directly at Ethan. "When did you agree to this?" "This morning." "Interesting." Daniel glanced between us. "Have you two met?" "Briefly," Ethan said. I almost laughed. 20 minutes later, we were heading downtown in a black sport utility vehicle. I opened my laptop, but did not read a single word on the screen. "You were outside the Ashford before anyone hired you." "Yes." At least he did not deny it. "Why?" "I was asked to observe the situation before the arrangement became official." "Asked by whom?" He looked through the windshield. "Someone concerned about your safety." "Daniel." Silence. "The board." More silence. I closed my laptop. You know, conversations usually work better when both people participate. The corner of his mouth moved. "You are participating enough for both of us." Our first meeting was at a private gallery in Soho. I had visited the building at least 6 times, but Ethan directed the driver toward a narrow side entrance I had never used. "How do you know about that door?" I asked. "It has fewer access points." That was not my question. "I know." Inside, the The security guard started reaching for the visitor log. Then he looked at Ethan and stopped. "Good morning, sir." Ethan gave him a small nod. No identification. No signature. No explanation. The elevator doors opened almost immediately. I stepped inside beside him. "Does everyone in Manhattan know you except me?" "That would be inconvenient." You avoided the question again. "I am becoming consistent." By noon, consistency was becoming suspicious. Ethan knew which corridor led directly to the gallery director's private office. He knew which elevator avoided the public lobby. When we stopped for lunch at a quiet Italian restaurant on Mulberry Street, the owner came personally to greet us. "Mr. Cole," the older man said, but something in his expression changed when he recognized Ethan. Respect, maybe, or caution. We were taken to a private table despite having no reservation. I waited until the owner disappeared toward the kitchen. "You come here often." "Not often." "He knew you." "Apparently." "Who did you protect before me?" Ethan lifted his water glass, but did not drink. "People who needed protection." "Important people?" His gaze settled on mine. "Something like that." Behind him, two men in expensive suits entered the restaurant. One noticed Ethan and stopped in the middle of a sentence. The other followed his gaze. Neither approached us. They simply moved to a table farther away. I watched them sit down. "They know you too." Ethan did not turn around. "Claire." "What?" "Eat your lunch." I should have been irritated. Instead, I noticed something stranger. The restaurant owner, the gallery guard, and those two men had all reacted differently to Ethan, but they had one thing in common. None of them treated him like hired security. They treated him like someone whose attention they did not want. I looked at the man sitting across from me and realized I had been asking the wrong question. I did not need to know who Ethan Cole had protected before me. I needed to know why powerful people seemed to think he was the one they should be careful around. By the time we stepped back onto Mulberry Street, I had stopped believing Ethan's connections were coincidences. The afternoon sky hung low over Manhattan, and a thin mist had settled over the sidewalks, turning storefront lights into blurred reflections beneath our feet. Ethan walked half a step behind me, close enough to notice everything and far enough that I never felt crowded. We were about 20 feet from the waiting vehicle when a man in a navy overcoat stepped away from the curb. "Claire Bennett." I stopped. Ethan moved before I answered. He did not grab me or touch the stranger. He simply placed himself between us. "Can I help you?" Ethan asked. The man offered a polite smile. "I only need a minute with Ms. Bennett. Then contact her office." "This is personal." Ethan's voice became quieter. "Then you definitely contact her office." The stranger studied him. His expression changed almost immediately. Recognition. Then caution. "I did not realize she was with you," he said. "With you. Not protected by you." Ethan took one step closer and said something too softly for me to hear over the traffic. The man nodded once. "Understood." Then he walked away without another word. I stared at Ethan. "What did you say?" "That this was not the place." That was enough to make him leave? Apparently. Who was he? Ethan opened the vehicle door. Someone looking for information. About what? His gray eyes met mine. "You." A cold feeling settled beneath my ribs. I climbed inside, and Ethan followed. "How do you know he wanted information about me?" People with innocent questions usually introduce themselves. I hated how reasonable that sounded. I hated even more that it did. Not explain why the man had reacted to Ethan like an employee seeing the company owner unexpectedly. The afternoon passed quietly. At the foundation office, Ethan chose the chair facing the entrance. During my meetings, he watched reflections in glass walls instead of staring directly at anyone. When an unexpected delivery arrived downstairs, he knew about it before Daniel did. At 6:30, Daniel told me there had been no new anonymous messages. Ethan did not look relieved. We left shortly after 7. Somewhere near Park Avenue, his phone rang. He checked the screen and answered in Italian. His voice changed. Not louder. Colder was not the right word either. Certain. I understood almost nothing, but I heard my name twice. "Claire." Then another word. "Moretti." Ethan glanced at me and turned toward the window. I pretended to check my email while listening to the rhythm of his voice. Then he switched to English. "Nobody touches her. That is an order." He ended the call. Silence filled the vehicle. I lowered my phone. "Was that about me?" "Yes." "Who were you talking to?" "A colleague." "Your colleagues usually take orders from you?" His jaw tightened. "Sometimes." The vehicle stopped outside my apartment building. Ethan stepped onto the sidewalk first and looked down the block. I remained inside. Ethan. He turned. Who are you? For the first time all day, he did not have an answer ready. Then his phone lit up on the seat beside me. I never touched it. I did not need to. The caller's name was bright enough to read from where I sat. Vincent Moretti. Ethan reached inside, picked up the phone, and silenced the call. His expression stayed calm. His eyes did not. Who is Vincent Moretti? I asked. Ethan looked at me for one long second, and I finally understood something about his silences. They were not empty. They were where he kept the truth. For several seconds, Ethan said nothing. Traffic moved behind him in ribbons of white and red, and rain tapped softly against the roof of the vehicle. Someone I know, he finally said. I stared at him. That answer might work better if seeing his name had not made you forget how to breathe. I was breathing. Barely. Something almost amused crossed his face, then disappeared. Go upstairs, Claire. I will stay outside. You are not coming in. You did not invite me. That stopped me. Ethan could make strangers leave with a sentence. He could give orders over the phone, like people were already waiting to obey. Yet when it came to my apartment, he treated the doorway like a line he had no right to cross. I went upstairs alone. 10 minutes later, I looked through my window. Ethan stood beneath the awning across the street, hands inside his charcoal coat, watching the block instead of my windows. At midnight, he was still there. At 1 a.m, still there. I should have felt watched. Instead, I slept without checking my lock twice. The next morning, Ethan waited downstairs holding 2 coffees. How do you know my order? I asked. Oat milk. 1 sugar. He handed me the cup. You ordered it yesterday. You remember everything? Only useful things. That sounds lonely. His eyes met mine. Sometimes. The answer stayed with me all morning. So did the smaller things I had started noticing. Ethan carried an extra umbrella because I kept forgetting mine. He never interrupted meetings when they ran late. When I skipped lunch, food appeared beside my laptop without a lecture. He could make security guards straighten just by walking into a lobby, yet he always waited for me to enter an elevator first. That evening, we drove back through Midtown beneath a gray winter sky. I closed my laptop. Can I ask you something without getting another mysterious answer? You can ask. Who protects you? His expression shifted. I do not need protection. Everybody needs someone. Ethan looked through the window for a long moment. Not everybody gets one. When we reached my building, rain had started again. I hesitated before stepping out. There is coffee upstairs. Ethan looked toward the entrance. I should stay here. That was an invitation. A pause. Then 1 coffee. Inside my apartment, he remained near the doorway until I motioned toward the living room. Even then, he moved like a guest who understood exactly where permission ended. While I filled the coffee maker, he stopped beside my bookshelf. His attention settled on a framed photograph of my father and me at Coney Island when I was 12. Ethan went completely still. Your father? He asked. Michael Bennett. He died 8 years ago. His eyes remained on the photograph. What? I asked. Nothing. You recognized him. I recognized the name. Before I could ask how, his phone vibrated. Ethan checked the screen, and every trace of warmth disappeared from his face. I need to take this. He stepped into the hallway, leaving the door partly open. His voice was low, but I could still hear him. She does not know. Silence. No. I am not telling her until I know who leaked the information. My hand froze around the coffee mug. Ethan lowered his voice further, but the final sentence reached me clearly. If someone inside the family gave them Claire Bennett's name, then nobody around her is above suspicion. The hallway went quiet, but Ethan's last sentence followed him back into my apartment. Nobody around her is above suspicion. I set my coffee on the counter before he could pretend I had heard nothing. Who leaked my name? I asked. Ethan stopped just inside the doorway. One look at my face told him everything. How much did you hear? Enough. Claire. No. You have spent 3 days asking me to trust you while deciding which parts of my own life I am allowed to understand. His expression tightened. I am trying to keep you safe. Then tell me why you recognized my father's name. Silence. I pointed toward the photograph. You knew something about Michael Bennett before you walked into this apartment. Yes. And Vincent Moretti? Ethan looked away for half a second. That is complicated. Everything about you is complicated. I took a breath. Is Cole even your real name? He did not answer quickly enough. That hurt more than I expected. I need 24 hours, he said. For what? to confirm who had access to information they should never have seen. And after that, I tell you what I can. It was not enough. But it was the first time he had promised me an answer instead of another wall. The next evening, the Hudson Arts Foundation held its winter benefit at the Beaumont Hotel on Fifth Avenue. Daniel wanted to postpone it after the anonymous messages, but the board refused. Nearly 400 guests were expected, and months of planning had gone into the event. Ethan arrived at 6 wearing a black suit instead of his usual charcoal coat. Under the chandeliers and marble arches, he looked different. Not more expensive, more familiar with the room than anyone had a reason to be. For the next hour, I moved between donors while Ethan remained close. I noticed the reactions now because I knew to look for them. A hotel executive greeted him first. A financier lowered his voice when Ethan passed. 2 men near the bar stopped talking completely. Then an older gentleman with silver hair approached me near the ballroom entrance. Ms. Bennett, Charles Whitmore. He shook my hand warmly before noticing Ethan behind me. His expression changed. Mr. Moretti, he said. I did not know you were back in New York. Everything inside me went still. I turned toward Ethan. He did not correct him. Charles looked between us and seemed to realize his mistake. Excuse me, he murmured before disappearing into the crowd. I walked straight toward Ethan. Moretti. His jaw tightened. Claire, not here. Yesterday, I asked whether Cole was your real name. I know. You let me walk away without answering. Because the answer changes things. Then change them. Before he could respond, his attention shifted past my shoulder. 3 hotel security employees were moving quickly near the ballroom doors. Ethan's entire posture changed. Stay beside me. Do not avoid this again. I am not. The chandeliers flickered once. Then twice. The music stopped. Darkness swallowed the ballroom before amber emergency lights appeared along the walls. Voices rose around us, confused but controlled. Ethan stepped between me and the main entrance. 3 men in dark suits appeared from different directions and looked directly at him. Waiting. Ethan gave one quiet instruction. They moved immediately. Nobody asked who had placed him in charge. Nobody questioned him. I watched the room rearrange itself around the man I had believed was hired to protect me, and one truth became impossible to ignore. Ethan Cole did not work for powerful people. Powerful people were waiting for Ethan Moretti to tell them what to do. The emergency lights turned the ballroom into a landscape of amber shadows, but Ethan moved through it like the darkness had changed nothing. Guests gathered near tables while hotel employees calmly directed them away from the main doors. Ethan stayed beside me, close enough to protect my space without touching me. We are leaving, he said. What happened? The primary system failed, and the backup responded too slowly. You figured that out by looking at the lights? I know this building. Before I could ask how well, one of the men in dark suits approached. East Service Corridor is clear, sir. Sir. Ethan nodded. Use the lower garage. Bring the vehicles around. The man left immediately. I looked at Ethan. Those are not your co-workers, are they? No. Finally, a direct answer. His eyes moved across the ballroom. Claire, please. Something in his voice made me stop arguing. Not authority. Urgency. I followed him through a service corridor and into an elevator that carried us beneath the hotel. When the doors opened, 3 black sport utility vehicles were waiting with their engines running. Those were not here when we arrived, I said. No. Who arranged them? Ethan opened the rear door of the middle vehicle. I did. I climbed inside. He sat beside me, and the other 2 vehicles moved with us as we left the garage. Manhattan passed beyond the windows in wet streaks of white and red. Ethan received one call after another. Every update came to him. Every decision waited for his answer. Nobody called Daniel. Nobody asked the foundation board. They asked Ethan, where are we going? I said, somewhere secure. My apartment. No. Another hotel? No. I turned toward him. Taking me somewhere without telling me where is not improving your credibility. His expression softened. You are right. My family has a property about 30 miles north of Manhattan. That is where we are going. Your family owns a private property with security? Yes. And 3 vehicles appear when you make a call? Yes. Anything else you would like to admit before we arrive? For the first time that night, he almost smiled. Several things. About 40 minutes later, we passed through tall iron gates. A long driveway curved between bare winter trees toward a stone house glowing against the darkness. Nothing about it looked new or flashy. It looked established, private, permanent. The front doors opened before our vehicle stopped. Ethan stepped out first and offered me his hand. I looked at it. I can manage. I know. He lowered it immediately. Inside, an older man in a dark suit crossed the marble foyer. Thank God you are here, sir. Ethan's voice changed. Robert, what do we know? We are reviewing everyone who had access to the information. Everyone. Not everything. A chill moved through me despite the warmth of the house. Claire, Ethan said, there is a guest room upstairs. You can rest while I handle this. No. Claire, I followed you 30 miles outside Manhattan after learning that your name might not even be Ethan Cole. I am finished waiting in another room while people discuss my life. Before Ethan answered, a voice came from the staircase. She is right. A silver-haired man stood on the landing. His eyes moved from me to Ethan, and the resemblance between them was immediate. You brought Michael Bennett's daughter here, he said. My breath caught. You knew my father? The man descended slowly. Ethan became completely still. Father, he said. One word rearranged everything. The older man stopped in front of me. My name is Vincent Moretti. Then he turned toward Ethan. And it is time she learned your real name. Ethan did not look at his father. He looked at me. The foyer seemed to shrink around us. Every sound reduced to the slow ticking of a clock somewhere beyond the marble hall. Tell me, I said. His expression remained controlled, but I had spent enough time watching him to recognize the silence before a truth he wished he could avoid. My name is Ethan Moretti. The words landed quietly. That somehow made them heavier. So Cole was a lie. The last name was. And being my bodyguard. His eyes stayed on mine. That was not what you were told it was. I let out a short breath. Then what exactly are you? Vincent shifted beside us, but Ethan raised one hand. His father stopped. No argument. No question. That small gesture told me almost as much as Ethan's answer. My family controls businesses throughout New York and New Jersey. Some are legitimate. Others are connected to a world you have spent your entire life outside of. I swallowed. The Moretti family. Yes. I knew the name. Most people in New York did. It appeared in old newspaper stories, courthouse rumors, and conversations that became quieter whenever someone said it aloud. I looked at Vincent. He is your father. Yes. Which makes you what? Ethan took a slow breath. His air. Suddenly the past few days rearranged themselves. The gallery guard. Antonio's careful expression. Charles Whitmore calling him Mr. Moretti. Men in expensive suits lowering their voices when he entered a room. Security teams waiting for his instructions. Ethan had never been unusually powerful for a bodyguard. He had simply never been one. You stood outside my apartment all night? I said. Yes. You brought me coffee. Yes. You followed me into meetings and waited outside doors. Yes. Why? His voice softened. Because those parts were real. Anger rose through the confusion. Do not do that. His brow tightened. Do what? Do not divide your lies into convenient pieces and tell me which memories I am allowed to trust. He accepted the words without defending himself. You could have told me. I could have. But you chose not to. Yes. Vincent quietly motioned for Robert to leave. A moment later, only the three of us remained. I looked at Ethan. Why would the heir to this family spend days pretending to protect an event coordinator? Because I did not trust anyone else to stay close to you. Why me? Ethan glanced toward his father. Vincent answered instead. Because this did not begin with you, Claire. My stomach tightened. My father. Vincent nodded. Michael Bennett discovered something years ago that certain people hoped would remain forgotten. I turned back to Ethan. Is that why someone was watching me? That is where it started. And you? He hesitated. When they realized I had personally taken an interest in your safety, the situation became more complicated. So you did not create the danger. No. Ethan stepped closer, then stopped several feet away, leaving the distance between us for me to decide. You needed protection before I found you. Once they realized I was the one protecting you, the stakes changed. Then why not hire professionals? Because someone inside my organization had information they should never have had. I did not know who I could trust. I remembered the words outside my apartment. Inside the family. Then who am I supposed to trust? Ethan answered immediately. That decision belongs to you. Vincent watched his son for a long moment. There is something else she needs to know. Ethan's jaw tightened. Father, no more partial truths. Vincent turned toward me. 8 years ago, Michael Bennett left something in my care. My breath caught. Vincent walked toward a closed study door and placed his hand on the brass handle. And if his past ever found its way back to you, he wanted someone to make certain you finally understood why. Vincent opened the study door, and the smell of cedar and old paper reached me before I stepped inside. A low fire burned beneath a stone mantel, throwing warm light across shelves of books and a heavy wooden desk near the windows. Vincent crossed to a locked cabinet and removed a thin brown envelope. My name was written across the front. Claire Bennett. I knew the handwriting before he placed it on the desk. That is my father's. My voice barely sounded like mine. Michael gave it to me 8 years ago, Vincent said. I looked at Ethan. He remained near the doorway, giving me more space than the room required. Why would my father trust your family? Vincent's expression softened. Michael did not trust families. He trusted people individually. He believed there was a difference. I opened the envelope. Inside was a single handwritten page. My father explained that his accounting work had uncovered financial connections between businesses and people who publicly claimed they had nothing to do with one another. He had preserved records of what he found, but separated them so no single person could control the entire truth. If questions about his work ever returned, I was supposed to trust my own judgment before anyone else's promises. The final line tightened my throat. Vincent owes me nothing. If he helps you, let it be because he chooses to. I read it twice. There is nothing here about Ethan. No, Vincent said. Michael never asked my son to protect you. I turned toward Ethan. Then why are you here? His eyes settled on the letter in my hands. Because 3 weeks ago, your name appeared in a message that reached my family. 3 weeks. Yes. You knew about me before Daniel received the anonymous messages. Yes. The pieces began clicking together. The sedan. The rain. Ethan appearing before the foundation had officially hired anyone. You were already watching me. I was watching for anyone watching you. Why not tell me? Because the message contained information only a small number of people should have known. Someone inside our organization leaked it. Until I knew who, assigning you a security team could have placed you beside the same person I was trying to identify. So you trusted yourself. His answer came without hesitation. With your safety, yes. I looked down at my father's letter. And Cole, my mother's maiden name. Even the false identity contained something real. Somehow that made everything more complicated. You could have hired someone outside your organization. I considered it. But you did not. Ethan paused. I saw the same sedan near your office 2 days before the gala. I did not want another layer between what happened around you and what reached me. I remembered every doorway he had watched, every unexplained phone call, every hour beneath my apartment awning. You made decisions for me without asking. I did. Believing you were protecting me does not make that fair. No. No defense. No excuse. Just an answer. Vincent quietly left the study and closed the door behind him. Rain tapped against the windows. What happens when this is over? I asked. Your father's records go to independent attorneys. The leak gets documented. Your life becomes yours again. And you? Ethan was silent for a moment. I stopped standing outside your door. The thought hurt more than I expected. You would just leave? If that is what you want. After all of this? His voice softened. Claire, protecting you was my choice. Staying near me has to be yours. Before I could answer, someone knocked. Robert entered holding a folder, his expression unusually tense. Mr. Moretti, we traced the access history. Ethan straightened. Who leaked her name? Robert looked toward the hallway, where Vincent waited beyond the open door. Someone who has been sitting at your father's table for 20 years. Robert gave us a name before midnight. Arthur Vale. Vincent's senior financial advisor had spent 20 years inside the Moretti organization, long enough to become the kind of man nobody thought to question. That trust had given him access to archived financial records connected to my father's work. There was no dramatic confrontation. Vincent did not raise his voice. Ethan made no threats. They simply removed Arthur from every position that had allowed him access to information he was never supposed to use. Before sunrise, his company credentials were disabled. Independent attorneys were preserving the relevant records, and outside investigators had copies of the access history Robert had uncovered. By morning, the anonymous messages stopped. By noon, investigators confirmed that Arthur had searched archived files containing Michael Bennett's name weeks earlier. He had discovered enough to believe my father had preserved something important, but not enough to know where it was. I had never possessed the secret everyone assumed I carried. That realization almost made me laugh. People had watched me and built an entire mystery around information I did not even know existed. Ethan transferred copies of my father's records to independent legal counsel under my authority. Not Vincent's. Not the Moretti family's. Mine. 2 days later, I stood in the foyer with my suitcase beside me. Ethan came down the staircase wearing the same charcoal coat he had worn the first night we met. "Your car is ready," he said. "Daniel says the foundation hired actual security professionals." The corner of Ethan's mouth moved. "That sounds reassuring. They have resumes. Impressive. And apparently their names are real." His expression softened. "I deserve that. A little." He removed the small earpiece he had worn almost every day and placed it on the table beside the door. "Then I suppose my assignment is finished." "Your imaginary assignment." "My imaginary assignment." I looked toward the rain beyond the windows. "What happens to Ethan Moretti now?" He glanced around the house. "I figure out which parts of this life are actually mine and which parts one only inherited." I nodded and walked outside. The car waited at the bottom of the steps. Rain fell softly, almost exactly as it had outside the Ashford Hotel. I made it halfway down before my father's words returned to me. "Trust your own judgment." I thought about every lie Ethan had told me. Then I thought about everything he had done when there was nobody to impress. Coffee remembered after hearing my order once. An extra umbrella. Hours beneath my apartment awning. A man who could command an entire room, but still waited for permission before entering my home. I turned around. Ethan remained in the doorway. He had not followed me. Of course he had not. I walked back up the steps. "I do not know Ethan Moretti," I said. His face became carefully still. "I understand." "No, you do not." I knew someone who remembered my coffee. Someone who stood outside in the rain because he thought I would sleep better. Someone who could tell 20 people what to do but never told me whether I had to stay. His eyes softened. "Claire, I am still angry. You should be. Trust does not repair itself because the danger is over." "I know." I took a breath. "But I would like to know the man underneath the names." For once, Ethan had no mysterious answer. He simply nodded. "Then we start there." I glanced toward the waiting car. "Coffee tomorrow?" "Oat milk. 1 sugar." I smiled. "You really do remember everything. Only useful things." Months later, I understood the difference between the world Ethan inherited and the man he chose to become. He inherited money. He inherited power. He inherited a name people feared. None of those things could make me stay, and none of them could make me trust him. My trust was the first thing Ethan Moretti ever had to earn.